Carl William Smith. 2. When I was young, it was Peaches. As I got older, it was Poodoo. When I was very young, uh, so I was told, I had curly eyelashes and a smooth skin. Now, why they named me Peaches, called me Peaches, I don't know. Raleigh, North Carolina. Having fun, getting into things as a kid would do. 93. Not smoking, not drinking, taking care of myself. Luck. Curious. Truthful. Energetic. Honest. I could read and write long before I went to school. I never struggled in school. I want to go faster than I could in school because my mind was ahead. I read a lot. The first book I ever read completely through was one that my mother brought home. It was called Frank on the Prairie. Having a father. I was born on June 8th, 1931. My father died in September 1931. I was 3 months old when he died. To right things that are wrong. History. Not having mortality long enough to see my great grandchildren grow, mature, and seeing what other miracles the Lord will make for this world. So far as living, I think I've outlived the life expectancy of a black man born in 1931. So everything that comes after this is a bonus. Listen to your mother. She's the one who's left to nurture you and mold you and give you values. And that's what I tried to do when I was young. As far back as I can remember, I always minded my mother. I didn't have a best friend when I was growing up. In my neighborhood, all the children were friends. I had one no better than the other. I just looked at them all equally, befriended them all in the same way, except those who started smoking early and drinking. I never participated in any of that, never. Washington High in Raleigh. I was in South Raleigh. There was only one high school in Raleigh when I was growing up, and that was it. For blacks, I should say. Not in high school. A 1941 Chevrolet, $50, 16 cents a gallon. A good student. A high school teacher, Rose 2. He was inspirational. He advised me that I could do great things. He inspired me. Really, I looked up to him. He was a good example. Since I didn't have a father, never knew a father, in some ways he was a father figure. Uh, if I'd had a father, it would probably have been a guy like Mr. Toole. Volunteered for the Air Force. Didn't like it. Came out of the Air Force after a short period and went to college. St. Augustine's University in Raleigh. Tough. I'm sorry to see the problems that it's having, financial. Lost its accreditation, but I understand they got it back, maybe with another accrediting agency. Started classes again this month. They were closed all of last year, and that's encouraging, but I still have some concern about the future of the university. I hope that they can get the resources that will keep it operative, but it's going to be a tough pull for them. I know that. I worked there for 5 years, and I have a very intimate connection with the school because I live right across the street from the college when I was growing up. That's why I have that attraction for it now. I played on the campus and knew every inch of it. So it pains me to see them going through the problems that they are now, but it'd be a tough pull for them. The neighborhood has changed. I stayed 50 feet from the gate. When I was in school, I had the honor of having the closest residents to the school, other than students from coming from out of state and out of the city and what have you. So as I go back now, I think my old home place still stands. It's the only one in the immediate vicinity of the university that does still stand. That won't be there long because I go by there often. My daughter drives me by there, and it's kind of hard for me to recognize the area because a lot of the homes have been demolished. New homes are coming in the area now, but it rejuvenates me when I go by there. There's an old spot in the old backyard that we had a garden, and in that garden there was an old boxbush tree where my mother used to get the switches to punish us. And every time I go by that spot now, I get a twinge in my behind. So I remember it. So it's that's the memory you have. You don't forget that, you know. But that was it. That was it. It pains me to see the old house. I think they're going to try to rebuild it, renovate it, but they're going to have a tough pull. I know what it's like. I know what went into the building of it because I've seen when I tried to have some renovations done there. I was surprised at some of the stuff that I saw. Termites now have eaten everything that a termite could eat. The house never had a foundation that you have now that have bricks. You can build a foundation, but Back then, that house was built on rocks, which caused the house to sink one area, and uh, and those problems now are just, I don't think it can be repaired. I don't. You can't raise it, uh, but I still know what's there. People who bought it don't know, but I know. But the house is still there, and so every chance I get, I go by there and look at it. It's where my mother died, where my father died, my uncle died, my first child was born, uh, where Jack Johnson died, heavyweight boxer. Uh, I remember all those incidents, especially back Jack Johnson. Uh, but the hospital now is just a skeleton. There were some attempts over the years to rehabilitate it, but those things have fallen through. But yeah, I have a lot of recollections about that area. And if I could change anything other than making the world better, would be that area. I loved it then. I love it now, but it's changed. It's changed tremendously. My first job, my first real job, came much later than my first job. Uh, I worked at a housing project when I was in high school. Uh, During the summer, cutting grass, maintenance type stuff. I also worked with the Raleigh Recreation Department at Chivas Park during the summer, swimming pool stuff, picking up trash. Other people came there for picnics and this type of thing. Uh, my first real job was after college. I was hired as a substitute teacher down in Farmville, North Carolina. I graduated mid-term. The same month I graduated, I started teaching. I replaced a lady who was on maternity leave. A very interesting thing about Farmville. I could tell you a story about teaching in Farmville that one of my instructors at St. Augustine's, I was talking to him. His name was Dr. Gordon West. Never will forget him. He asked me, where was I going to teach? I told him Farmville, North Carolina. He said, well, where's Farmville? I said, well, Farmville about 50, 60 miles east. And he said, Farmville. So they have a lot of farms down there, I guess. I said, well, yes, sir. I'm sure they do. I said, most of eastern North Carolina is agricultural, so you have a lot of farms down there. He said, let me tell you something, Carl. So now you're going down there to teach. So the students you're going to get down there, not like the students up here in Raleigh. So they're not going to be knowledgeable about things like you have up here. So you're going to find some of them never been in a bank. So they'll be ignorant about things that you take for granted. He said, but if you're ever going to teach, so let me tell you one thing. If a student doesn't know, he just doesn't know. He said, don't get upset with them. Don't talk condescendingly to them. So if a person doesn't know, he just doesn't know. I've always kept that in my mind. I always loved to teach, and that's what I thought would be my life's vocation. And even when I left Farmville, I had another teaching experience down in Roseboro, North Carolina. Same thing. Farming, students not knowing things, not familiar with things. And even I taught on the collegiate level, same thing. Student doesn't know, just doesn't know. And why doesn't he know, or she? Because they weren't taught it. And you have to take them on the level they are and try to raise them the best you can to a level that will enable them to progress and to motivate them in a way that they can have that desire to know more and to ask questions. And I always felt that for a student to know something, they need to have the motivation to learn on their own, to read, to listen. So one of the things I did even in high school, when I was teaching high school kids, was to get them to try to get involved in what's happening locally in their communities. On the national level, didn't push that too much. And I would ask questions even on the collegiate level. I would ask questions not particularly on what I was teaching on, but just nationally, things that were happening in the state, to see if they had that familiarity and how things even on the local and state level affected just about everything else that was happening. Sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But I would like to think that some of the students that I had over the years were inspired in some way or other. And then I'd get back to the stuff that they really were in my class to talk about. My mother's name was Julia Elizabeth May. May was her maiden name. She was born somewhere in Halifax County, I was told. Don't know too much about my mother's childhood, whether she had any brothers or sisters. She married Frank May, who stayed in my neighborhood, just about 4 blocks from where the old house is now. I know more about him and his family than I do about my mother's family. She never talked much about her family, whether or not she had brothers and sisters. I only knew her father. I knew him shortly, a very short time. He stayed with us for a short time before he died. But on my grandfather's side of the family, I knew all of them. And on my father's side, I knew all of his brothers. In fact, I actually talked with one of his sisters down in Roseboro. He had 2 other sisters that I only knew about them briefly when one of my uncles died. They came down from New York, or one of them came down from New York. The other I should learn their name. Never met her. But, and he had two brothers, Claude Smith and Sherwood Smith. Claude Smith stayed about 2 blocks from us on the old home place. I could walk right out of our back door and walk about 2 blocks and walk right into his front door. Sherwood Smith stayed in Falls River, Massachusetts. I think he was a chef. And he came down occasionally to visit. And when he retired, he moved back to Raleigh and stayed in Raleigh until he became ill and died. Claude Smith, my father's other brother, died in the early 40s. He was shot. My aunt, my daddy's sister, the one who talked with me down in Roseboro, lived in Fayetteville. And she died in the 70s. So all of my aunts and uncles are dead. If they had children, I don't know. Well, I know Uncle Sherwood had some children. I think one stayed in Washington and one lived with him for a while in Raleigh. I think he joined the service or something. Never heard from him again. But on that side of the family, I have no knowledge of any of them. On my mother's side, she had some relatives, but they all moved away. And any of them I met early in life, except one. I never quite could figure out one of them. Her name was Hattie Mae, so I know she was on my mother's side because my father, at least her grandfather, her father was a Mae. She stayed in Brooklyn, New York. We used to call her Aunt Hattie. Very nice lady. She would come down to visit often. And the reason I remember her is because I told you once before that I never smoked. She came down one summer, one of my brothers, my youngest brother. We were in the old bathroom at Oakwood, smoking cool cigarettes. And she got the scent of this cigarette sifting about. And she was out. And I didn't enjoy smoking, so I said, well, smoking's not worth this. So I never smoked after that. Well, I'll take that back. I did try it after that. But every cigarette I've ever smoked in my life, you can get it in one pack. So that turned me off of smoking. But the interesting thing about smoking, my mother told me once about what my father would do when he came home from work. And he smoked cigars. And she told me that he would put me on his knee and bounce me up and down and blow a cigarette. a cigar smoke in my and my face, and I couldn't connect this till years later when I started hearing this dialect coming out of New Orleans and Louisiana, who dat. And she said that when he did that, he would say, who dat, who dat, who dat. And blow the cigar smoke. But from that day to this day, I still have that scent in me. And I said, I tried to find that scent all my life, really. And it came from Tampa Nugget cigars. It had a little sweet smell to it or something like that. So the only tobacco smoke that I've always liked the smell was a Tampa Nugget. Never smoked one, but I've smelled it. Other than that, I have no recollection of my father, but I do have something that they took out of my father after he died, and I still have it. It's a big stone, about a quarter-sized stone, that said they killed him. I don't know what the stone is, but I still have it. I've kept it all my life. I still have it. He died at St. Agnes, and also he was 35 when he died. Both my parents got married when they were 17. But as far as my dad, that's the only piece of him that I have.
How would you describe your mom?
She was beautiful. There's a picture of her right there on the wall. She must have had at least a high school education. She wrote beautifully. She wrote poems, stories, had a nice handwriting. She was smart. I don't know how a woman who was a widow at age 35 with 8 children. And I was born during the Great Depression, 1931, the youngest of the 8, without a father. And yet my mother kept us all together right there in the old home place. She was a miracle. I think of her every day. When I say my prayers at night, I always mention my mother. When people end their prayers with the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, I always mention my mother. Father, Son, Holy Ghost, and my mother. I do that every night. There isn't a day that I go by that I don't think of her. And one reason why I can't forget her, I walk right past her every day. She's a beautiful, beautiful woman. I never heard her say a curse word in my life. She died at age 62, heart attack. She disciplined us all. My older siblings, as they became older, they left. But 8 children at age 35, a widow. The values that she instilled in me, I just can't imagine. As other kids that I grew up with drifted, some of them got into trouble, started smoking, drinking, all that. I didn't dare do that because that old boxbush tree in the backyard, I couldn't do it. Wasn't worth the price. But Lord, I know there's a woman put on this earth. I can't think of anyone better than my mother. She had to do everything. She made us go to church, made us go to school, didn't take any mess off of any of us. Because that boxbush tree in the back, we all knew that. We knew it was coming. Even the girls. I don't remember too much punishing the girls, but they got punished when they did wrong. My mother wanted to be a missionary. She always told me that. And she would have been a good missionary. She had this empathy, this understanding. As I said before, I don't know how far she went in school, but I know it couldn't have been far. But she's a very intelligent person. Very intelligent person. Had a good financial mind. All of them are gone. All of my siblings are dead. I'm the last one. My brother, who's next to me, he was 3 years older than me. He died 3 years ago. He died at age 93. It's, yeah, I have memories of all of them. The faces just flash now. All of I can remember the name of all of my teachers, every last one of them. I can name them to you right now. Their faces with me right now. I can go through every last one of them. I guess that's one reason that Gabe said my memory. Sure. But each of them impressed me in such a way that the memory stays with me. I mean, just as plain as if I'm looking at you, I can see them now. I met one of my first grade teacher when they built the first supermarket here in Raleigh, A&P, downtown Raleigh. I was in my late 20s, and I was in a store. And I was coming down an aisle, and there was my first grade teacher, Miss Logan. And I spoke to her. I said, Miss Logan. She says, Carl Smith. I'll never forget that little face. That's what she told me. And the reason why, my mother worked in the library at Louisiana. And we didn't have kindergarten schools back then. And I was too young to start school. So she would take me to work with her, and I would sit in Miss Logan's first grade classroom for other first graders, but I was younger than them. And so even some of those kids now that I was in first grade with then, years after, not now, because they all gone too, would swear to the day they died that I was as old as they were. So I guess for Mr. Logan, because I was there for 2 years rather than 1 year, that's why she probably remembered me as she did. But a very, very good lady. Her husband was a ventriloquist. First ventriloquist I've ever known. But he had this little dummy that we used to call the ventriloquist hat. And he would come and give little shows at Louisiana. And yeah, Miss Logan, Miss Hunt in the second grade, Miss McCauley in the third grade, Gusta Gray in the fourth grade, Arthur Jones in the fifth grade, Arthur Lane in the sixth grade, uh, Murray Phillips in the seventh grade, and they named the high school for Murray Phillips in Raleigh, and Moselle Lane in the eighth grade. All of them. I mean, they're just with me. And some of the kids I went to in elementary school with also went to Washington High. So, but yeah, all my teachers, too, in high school, principals, all of them, just amazing. And I went back to the 100th anniversary of Washington High just last year, or this year, back in August. Washington High celebrated its 100th anniversary. And I spoke there. And Washington High, it was in South Raleigh. Well, the Black Cemetery, Mount Hope Cemetery, is a couple of blocks down from Washington High. And I asked if any of my old classmates, class of 49, were there. And none of them stood. So I assumed that I was the only one. But I told the folk, I said, I'm sure that some of them are here because the cemetery is right next door. I said, if they're there, they hear me, you know. So I guess it was good going back, but the school wasn't there. I mean, the building is there, but it's now a sixth grade magnet school. Now one of the best in the state, got national awards. And I went through the school trying to see myself going in the old classrooms, which most of them now have been renovated. You know, where one of my where the dean's office was now. I mean, that's the whole section has bathrooms and all this kind of stuff. But I told my daughter who took me there, I said, it's changed so much. And some of the places that I used to remember, they aren't there anymore because they made additions and all this kind of stuff. But the building itself, the name is still there in the front. But I told the people, so this is a Washington school. Neighborhood, the only thing in the neighborhood now is the school building. The whole neighborhood just gone. Streets, churches, church where I got married is right up the street from Washington School. That's gone. The girl that I married stayed about 4 or 5 blocks from the school. That church is gone. All the schools, all the houses, the streets, just gone. Nothing. It's just like a bomb that wiped out the whole area. Urban renewal. That's what did it. But and that really took me back. I was telling my daughter, I said it's and I was telling people when I spoke there at the anniversary, I said the whole neighborhood, everything just gone. I mean, it's just like it never existed except the school. But that brought a tear to my eye first time I saw it. I guess it's the price you pay for living so long. You know, it's if you die early, you don't get that till you take what you know with you when you die. But when you live a long time, And I guess that's one of the things price you have to pay unless you get dementia or something like that. Speaking of dementia, my sister uh, died from that also, and in her later years, uh, she stayed in Brooklyn. She wanted to come back home, and she did. Her son brought her back to the old home place. I wasn't staying there then. I moved out here. Uh, but she still, the old house was there. I still owned it then. And I would sit her on the front porch. I was standing right across the street from St. Augustine's. And she could look out. And I would say, Doris, I said, do you remember that? She'd look at me. I said, you remember that, Bill? You remember the old hospital? There? You see it from our front porch. But what she did remember was an old magnolia tree that was right across the street from the old home place. She did remember that tree, which had lost a lot of its foliage and everything over the years. But she did remember that magnolia tree. And I don't know if you ever smelled the magnolia, but it's sweet. You can get a sweet smell. And she used to remember that tree. And because she was that she pointed to the tree. We used to go and pull the magnolias off the tree and what have you. That's the only thing that she remembered. But she did come back, and she remembered that she died shortly thereafter. My oldest sibling was a girl. Her name was Jessie. The oldest boy was named Howard. We called him Haggy. He's an outstanding athlete. He went to high school, won awards, and with Hampton won awards in track, played basketball. My next oldest sister was named Alice. My next oldest sister was named Doris. Well, her name was Julia Doris. The first name came after my mother's name, but we never called her Julia. We all called her Doris. There were three girls, Jessie, Alice, and Doris. And there were five boys. Howard was the oldest boy. Clifton was the next oldest boy. Claude, named after my Uncle Claude. And Wade was the knee baby. He was the one next to me, and then me. All of them died from something different. There was no commonality to the deaths. My oldest sister died of tuberculosis in 1940. She and my oldest brother, Howard, died of lung cancer. He smoked a lot. My next oldest sister had an asthmatic attack. She died. Children thought she was asleep. She was on the sofa there in New York. My next oldest brother, Clifton, died of pancreatic cancer. An interesting thing about him, he was here in September of that year, or September the year before he died, sitting at the table right in that kitchen, eating. He had driven down from Metuchen, New Jersey. That's where he was staying then. And he asked me if I had some Tums, say a little indigestion or something like that. And I told him no. I gave him something, I don't know, some kind of bicarbonate of soda. I don't know what it was. But he drove back to Metuchen, no problems. And he had this Cadillac, beautiful car, had his initials on the door. And he got back to Metuchen, and I got a call, I don't know, maybe about a month or so after that he'd gone to the hospital and been diagnosed this pancreatic cancer thing. And he was telling me that, well, I knew because I was working at Carolina then, I had some knowledge of cancers and what have you. And I knew that one of the most virile of cancers is pancreas, that you very seldom recover from that. If it hits you, you go fast. It's not like colon cancer or prostate cancer, things like that. Those are cancers that develop over a period of time. It just doesn't come up and you don't go just like that. You can work on prostate and colon cancer. You get colostomies and one thing like that. You can survive those. But from the time he was down here in the fall, he died in February. And when I went up to see him, I didn't recognize, because he'd lost so much weight. I mean, so much he just was just nothing almost. And but he died from that. Well, I told you about my sister who had dementia, what have you. My brother Claude, he was in the service for a long time. He retired. But Claude was shipped from, I think he went to Alaska, then he went to somewhere in Africa, and he went back to Africa for whatever reason, I don't know. But anyway, he developed a circulatory problem, and both his legs were amputated. And he had both those legs replaced, and he had these prostheses that he never used them. He stayed in his wheelchair. And I suspect that led to the circulatory problems. I'm not sure of that. But and he died from that circulation. Doctors say that it must have affected his kidneys from not being able to exercise and what have you. But and I was talking to my doctor some time ago, because I now have a kidney problem also. I'm at about stage 2 or 3 of kidney, and I'm looking forward to dialysis. And I suspect that at some time the next 3 or 4 years, I might have to go on dialysis. And I know there's not likely that I'm going to be able to live longer than that. I'm prepared for that, because I said before, I've lived long. I'm supposed to live anyway. But Claude died from that. My brother, who died about 3 years ago, Wade. I think Wade was the smartest of us all. He could do it. Wade had a knack. You'd have some people just have a knack. They could do it. If you see somebody do it, then he could do it. He did everything. Wade built little crystal radio sets. He built the first skateboard that I've ever seen. You have skateboards now, the kids get them and joke around. But Wade took a piece of wood and took wheels off of a skate, you know, screwed it to the bottom. He had a skateboard. He was excellent with television sets and all that before it became digital and all that kind of stuff. If you needed a tube replaced and all that kind of stuff, Wade could do it. He could do everything. Wade was the maintenance guy at Washington Terrace for 50 years. After he came out of service, it was the only job he ever had. After he'd worked there for 50 years. And I felt Wade smart in school. He went to high school. In fact, we spent the last 2 years together at Washington High. I was a freshman, he was a senior, because they're 3 years apart. And I was the first in my family to graduate college. Wade started college, but he got married after he got out of service and moved to Washington Terrace. He moved to Washington Terrace while they were still building it. All of his children were born there. But he died, and I think on his death certificate said it was COVID. But he had some other ailments also. But this is COVID is what killed him. He died in the Veterans Hospital in Durham. So it left me. I'm the only one standing. I don't know how long I'll be standing, but I'm here. So that's the history of my siblings. None of us died from the same thing. So that's when the doctors ask me certain things go in your family, you know, and I was telling my doctor just this summer, he told me he was referring me to a kidney specialist, which I haven't gone yet, but my first appointment is next month. This is September, yeah. September the 7th or 8th or something like that. I go kidney specialist the first time. So he'll probably put me on some type of regimen, and I'll probably end up needing a kidney. But I was telling my daughter, I never tell the doctor, I don't know. I told her I wouldn't ask anybody for a kidney. You know, how much longer do I want to live? When I have a living will, I told my doctor, I told my daughter, I said, now, I don't want any tubes running in and out of me. That's when I get to that point, I just tell them to stop it. I said, I can't ask you for a kidney. I'm not going to ask my older daughter, who's 68. She's an old woman. You know? So I can't ask her to give a kidney at her age. And I don't want a 68-year-old kidney in me anyway. But I said, let it go. Just let it go. So that part of it, I'm prepared for that. I'm prepared for that. I think I've had a fairly good life. I've gone much farther than I thought I would. I've always wanted to teach. Yeah, so that's what I did until I taught North Carolina Central for 11 years, and they've got a job at UNC as assistant to the provost. The first black, I might add, to ever hold that position at UNC at Chapel Hill. And I was at UNC for 23 years. I retired there in 1995. And I've always, when I was in high school, my dream was to go to UNC. But segregation then, just that was out of the question. But to end up at UNC, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. But that was a good experience. It was a good experience. I would trade that experience for anything. But what it did teach me, or show me, the difference between the support that UNC received from the state, the support that North Carolina College receives. There's no comparisons, no comparison. But and I used to share some stuff that I knew with my colleagues at North Carolina College. That's what it was called then. And one of the deals that I had was that I would be a liaison between North Carolina College and UNC, because I had tenure at North Carolina College, and I went over to UNC on leave for 2 years, and could go back to North Carolina College after 2 years and still have my teaching position there. But at UNC, it made me an offer I couldn't refuse. I couldn't turn it down. So I resigned my position at North Carolina College and stayed at UNC. That was the biggest decision I ever made, because I could have stayed at North Carolina Central because of tenure until I retired. Taking the position at UNC at Chapel Hill, I could be fired after 90 days. Because that was an at-will position. It wasn't a teaching position. It was an administrative position. And my boss, who was assistant to who was the provost. The provost is the equivalent to the vice chancellor of academic affairs. I don't know if you are familiar with that position or not. But all the schools in academic affairs, law school, social work, library of science, journalism, the College of Government, and I used to be the Institute of Government, now it's called the College of Government. All of the professional schools in academic affairs, including the general college, general sciences, undergraduate programs, the library, all the institutes and what have you, all reported to the provost. And my position was to handle the budgets. So the budgets come and we allocate the budget to the various schools and departments and what have you. And that was my job primarily, to get those things straight. Also to assist in some of the hiring procedures. We appoint professors, and all those things come to the provost's office. Firings, and all that. That aspect of it was very interesting, and it wasn't a job that was created for me. It was a job that had existed there before me, and when I got the job, I didn't apply for it. For some reason, I was selected. Now the story is, and I have no reason to doubt this, that the provost, well, my boss at UNC could see what was coming because the Supreme Court that to all segregation and everything, and the university wanted to segregate more than it had been. It used to be the Consolidated University of North Carolina, it just included UNC at Chapel Hill, North Carolina State here in Raleigh, and the University of North Carolina in Greensboro for women, what have you. Those were called the Consolidated University. Consolidated University. That's all the University of North Carolina consisted of. All the other state-supported institutions, black institutions, just as North Carolina Central, Elizabeth City State, Winston-Salem, Fayetteville, and Pembroke. These are all schools, black schools primarily, who had to compete with the legislature for their own funding and what have you. But when the system was created, all of them became universities, which meant they no longer had to compete for funds. The system competed for funds and doled it out to each other schools, which is very good, I might add. So the university system was created in 1972, July 1, 1972. And July 1, 1972, it was when I officially became a part of the University of North Carolina. Of course, that's where I was then. And I just gave up my tenure at Central, at North Carolina College to stay at UNC Chapel Hill. But the interesting thing about that, getting back to how I got there, for a little bit I could glean is that the people could see that the system now would have to be more inclusive of the population. No longer black students going to the state-supported schools and blah, blah, blah. And UNC at the time was considered the most liberal of the schools in the system. And it was. The biggest alumni support group for Chapel Hill was in the legislature. Just about all the lawyers and what have you who were legislators had gone to UNC law school and one thing and another. So we had a big supporting body. And then Bill Friday was a giant in education. And but that was how that, well, getting back to my story, is that the provost at UNC came over to see the vice chancellor of academic affairs at North Carolina College. And he wanted a black in his office. And apparently, the provost at North Carolina State here in Raleigh wanted the same thing, but that Chapel Hill would be more receptive to this than the state here in Raleigh would be. And that it would be more receptive if had a black at Chapel Hill, had less opposition to it if you have one. And see, that's just what was floating around, and I didn't have no reason to doubt that from the bits and pieces that I picked up over the years. So the visit between the provost at North Carolina, at Chapel Hill, and the vice chancellor of academic affairs at North Carolina University, the provost at Chapel Hill wanted to make a selection, and he came over to North Carolina College to do this. I had no knowledge of this going on at all. And somehow my name came up in the conversation. And that's the way the story goes. But I I didn't apply for it. Well, anyway, got this conversation. Evidently, Dr. Robinson, who was the vice chancellor at North Carolina Central, mentioned my name to the guy at Chapel Hill. And he contacted me mention it to me. I wonder if I were interested in it. Well, all right, now, here I am teaching at North Carolina Central. Chapel Hill is the major leagues. You know, if you are working in the university system, teaching and what have you, and here's the opportunity now to go to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and I ask now. Let me tell you this. Prior to that, I had been offered the position of assistant to the chancellor at North Carolina Central. Here again, I had not applied for that job either. My name was mentioned, and I think Al Whiting was the chancellor then, and I turned that job down because there were things weren't working right in Durham, and my dean, School of Business, Stuart Fulbright, told me that things weren't going well, and that he didn't think I should take the job. He might can edit that out somewhere, I don't know. But so I turned the job down at Durham and told the chancellor I enjoyed teaching, and that's where I wanted to continue. I had tenure then, or whatever you see. So I turned the job down and talked to the provost at Chapel Hill and told him that I could accept a minority position. I want to be the assistant to the provost at UNC for Minority Affairs. And I said, I'm working now at Durham in a minority school. Why would I go to Chapel Hill for Minority Affairs, even though the pay would be significantly better? And he said that it wouldn't be a minority position. He said, all of your predecessors have been white. Say, and you'll be doing the same things that they did. And that was to take all the certain stuff that I be too busy to handle now, I'll put it in the wheelbar and send it to you. And that no one would know. No one need to know unless that you were black. Unless they came in and saw you. And that worked just like he said. All the faculty and other deans at Chapel Hill are all responded to white assistant to provosts over there. And indeed, I did have some people who came to my office for the first time and saw I was black. You see the mouth open. So that didn't. I could sit in my office. Really, I could sit in my office, and I wouldn't see a black student or a black faculty unless they had some reason to come there, and that suited me just fine. And indeed, interesting story here. One of the professors who was teaching over there at Chapel Hill at the time came to my office. Watch, this is a true story. And he introduced himself. His name was Vogel, Fred Vogel. He was taught in romance, taught as professor in the Department of Romance and Languages, I believe it was. And he said, I just want to come by and meet you. He said, when I heard you'd been appointed, he said, I thought that I knew you, So he said, we have something in common. And I said, what's that? He said, we have the same godmother. I said, we do? He said, yes. He said, my godmother is named Aunt Polly Snodgrass. I said, Pearl Snodgrass is your godmother? He said, yes. He said, I said, well, she's my godmother too. He says, I met you. He said, I came over to visit Aunt Polly, and she brought me by your house. And he said, you were sitting at a table reading a book or something. I said, you visited my house when you were a youngster? He said, yes. And I had no recollection of that happening, none whatsoever. But his Aunt Polly stayed right down the street from the old home place I had on Oakwood Avenue, about a block. She was on St. Aug's side of the street, and we were on the other side of the street. And so he said, I remembered you. So that's, and he said, I wrote Aunt Polly and told her that you were working now at Chapel Hill. And I said, my God. And he invited me and my wife to dinner. And that was my introduction to the first faculty member at UNC at Chapel Hill. In high school. We were in high school together. She was a junior, I was a senior. And odd enough, I told her then that I was going to marry her. She was dating a guy who played football. And she didn't take me seriously. But I did tell her then that I was going to, I said, I'm going to marry you one day. But I didn't participate in any sports in high school. We went through that before. But this guy did. And so I took from that she liked athletes. So, all right. We dated a couple of times in high school. Nothing serious. But when she graduated, she went to Hampton. I graduated, went to St. Aug. Well, in St. Aug, I did start playing sports because I still thought she liked athletes. So I played football, ran track, basketball. Got a busted lip, scald my eye. And then in college, we started dating seriously. And even while I was teaching in Roseboro, mostly, I'd drive up to Hampton. And even after I graduated from college, I would drive up to Hampton. I told you that my first car was an old 1941 Chevrolet. That was when I first started, or my first real car. That's when I started teaching in college. It was a 51 Buick. And I've gone through 11 Buicks since. Sorted other cars, but my first car was a Buick Super. Well, anyway, but when I married my wife, she told, she said, well, I didn't care anything about athletes. I said, I got into athletes because I thought you liked athletes. So I didn't care anything about athletes. You know? What am I this busted arm here, this fat lip I got, you know. I went through all that. you you didn't like athletes, you know? So no. But anyway, that was a story I learned then. That's how I met her in high school. Really, her mother was a teacher, um, and she stayed right up the street from Washington High School. I think I mentioned that earlier. But that's how it came about. So we got married in 1955 at the church that was later torn down because of urban renewal, First Congregational Church. Uh, that's where we got married. Uh, and so that's the way that it went. We were married. My wife died in 2012. We moved out here in 1990. She continued teaching while after she graduated from Hampton. But she later became the director of what was called the Neighborhood Youth Corps. And after that, she became a community development specialist for the city of Raleigh. And she really was the marketing person for all the new homes you see now in the new neighborhoods and all that. Even you said you have a person who lives around the corner of a whole place in Raleigh. If she was still alive, she would have been involved in that because all the new homes that Raleigh started building, she was the person who went out and made sure that the contractors and the builders were doing things according to the Davis-Bacon Act that required them to have a certain number of minority people working for them and all this kind of stuff. And then she also assisted in people getting financing, people, low-income people, getting the finances to buy these homes. But the interesting thing about it is that even with that type of assistance, most of the new homes that are being built were being bought by white people. And that led to explosion of these new homes in black areas being now integrated more by white folk than blacks. Because blacks just didn't have the resources to compete for them. I mean, it's a good thing. So for the homes, beautiful homes, but just out of range, out of reach for the black folk, all the Washington Terrace. I don't know if you knew what Washington Terrace, whether or not you know familiar Washington Terrace now, that I don't know. But the old Washington Terrace, just for blacks, really. And then now, Washington Terrace now, you go over there and I guess you see more whites than blacks. And those areas, you're right across the street from Washington Terrace, the Murray Phillips School is my old name from my old 7th grade teacher, Murray Phillips. So it's, and when I go by there now, you know, just know, it's just so different. Now, where was I? Oh, athletics, and what have you. But that's how my wife and I got together. Talented, a people person, a hugger, and inquisitive. My wife would hug a tree, and she would know that tree's mother and that tree's father, she could ingratiate herself with almost anybody. I'm just the opposite. My wife and I were completely opposite in that direction. Uh, she played the piano beautifully. We have the old piano right inside that door that came from an old home place. That's a one piece. We bought several pieces from an old home place. That piano is one of them. Uh, they had one of the largest houses over there that was destroyed and what have you. And that desk right there is it's got to be over 100 years old. And that desk has been in my life all of my life. There's no nails holding that thing. It's just wood, pegs. You can pull that desk apart right now. You probably won't run a nail in it, except the little metal pieces there. But anyway, uh, my wife, uh, everybody liked Pearl. Uh, it was it was a it was a good marriage. We had two children. Wendy, you've met Wendy. My oldest daughter Wanda, who's 68. She stays out in North Raleigh. Uh, we lost a son uh, in ninth month. I almost lost my wife too. Uh, and I thought I was going to lose her because St. Agnes was not equipped to handle the types of problems that my wife had, and they had to rush her over to Duke with the last pint of blood that they had here. As fast as blood went in her, it was coming out of her. And I never forget going over to Duke, and Wake Med had not opened then. And when we got to Duke, everybody there waiting for her. Now let's pull up. They had attendants out, taking her blood was running out of her, taken in the hospital. And she was in bad shape. She was in bad shape. And I remember the doctors coming out after about an hour or so, and they was telling me that said that she had lost the baby and were trying to save my wife. I think it was one of the worst moments in my one of the worst moments in my life. That was when my mother died. But and then when she recovered, she did recover. Said she'd have trouble having children after that. So there was 13 years of difference between my first child, the one who's 68, and Wendy. So Wendy was born in 1970. The only good thing about Wendy at the time of them being born was that when I had a live-in babysitter, because Wendy could now, Wanda could now babysit Wendy, you know. But that's the way that's how that worked out. But Pearl, we got a picture together somewhere. There it is over there. See over the desk? That's when we got married over there, coming out of the church, and then in the limousine going from the church. But yeah, she was a wonderful person. She was a wonderful person. Had a lot of friends. But she was great. She was a great person. Great person. Beautiful. My granddaughter is named Chandler. That's Wendy's daughter. She married, Chandler's 34. She married a fellow from Raleigh named Terry Griffith. both are UNC Charlotte grads. Terry works for Bank of America. Chandler's very talented. She works for the Research Triangle Institute. She works from home, both in Charlotte. They have a home in Charlotte. Two great grandkids. Aria, who's 5, she's just starting kindergarten this year. Very talented, very vocal, loves soccer, loves to run. And Miles, boy, Miles is 20 months old. He'll be 2, maybe 2 in February, I believe. And they come here, and we got a big backyard back there. Gabe is very good with kids. Aria calls Wendy Gigi. Doesn't call her grandma, calls her Gigi. And they call Gabe Pop. Me, I'm Grandpa. They're very active kids. And that's what I told you once before. If I could live long to see my grandkids, great grandkids, grow and mature, and what have you. If they're like their parents, they're beautiful. Wendy, she's my life now, because if it weren't for them, I wouldn't be here. I'd be in another, because I would have sold this place long ago and gotten in a smaller place somewhere. But, and I'm going to leave the house to them, really. It's in my will. But Gabe, magnificent guy, former policeman, former DEA official. Gabe was the first director of the DEA's cybersecurity office. He set it up, organized it, one thing or another. Smart guy. The yard, he does all that. I don't drive anywhere now. I haven't driven in 3 years. Almost forgotten how. They don't let me. My sight's failing me. I'm deaf in this ear. I'm blind in this eye from different things. I've been deaf since 1973. Completely deaf. Had an operation called a stapledectomy, supposed to clear it up. But whatever caused the deafness just grew over the prosthesis. And the thing is, they can't take the prosthesis out because something is grown over it, and that keeps the sound from vibrating in there. The eye came about 20 years ago, not a little less than 20 years ago. I was sitting on the couch right there, watching TV, and all of a sudden, all these colors started coming. And what it had was a blood vessel had burst up there, and had it treated. But whatever it was, it didn't stop the vision from deteriorating until finally it just closed out. And the same thing is happening this. I'll take a shot now. I took the last shot, took this, when it go to this week, Tuesday. I have to get a shot in this eye every, next time is 10 weeks from now. Well, it's anywhere from 10 to 12 weeks, depending on whether it's going to keep the same thing from happening in this eye that happened here, pressure and what have you. I got a good prognosis when I went this week. I told the doctor that I was having some probably cloudedness, that my depth perception is shot. Everything looks flat to me. So if I walking on the sidewalk or something, the curb in the street looks the same to me. So I stumble. And the same instructions going walking in the yard. I don't walk in the yard anymore because I got different indentions in the earth and what have you. So you look at my back door now, you see piles of dirt among spread out on some of the soil down in the back there. Because when I walk back there, it's they don't want me there. So Wendy and Gabe did all that. But it's so those are the types of things. I had two favorite meals. When Pearl was alive and did the cooking. It was pork chops, apples, slab of cheese, glass of milk. All right, Dances with Wolves. And but I don't think Dances with Wolves can be topped. Dances with Wolves. I go back to the old singers. I'm not into hip hop and stuff like that, rap. I don't just can't hear all them singing anyway, But yeah, I do old stuff. My favorite singer is Perry Como. Matt Monroe. You probably never heard of him. Tom Jones, Engelbert Humperdinck, because that was my wife's favorite singer also. Pearl was very musical. So all the old guys back from the 40s, and the 60s and the 70s, I like Brooke Benton. Jackie Wilson. But I don't like jazz oddly enough. And then too, I can't dance. See, I mean not a lick. but and I don't swim even though I worked at the park for 3 summers. Every time I go in the pool, I slip up and fall, hit my head. This isn't worth it. Like smoking, it's not worth it. But yeah, I go in for the ink spots. You don't hear them anymore. The Mills Brothers. But I have a Google. I can just pull up Google, and ask for anything. They give it to me. Went to music. Used to have a jazz festival up in Hampton, and I think at that time I had Glass Night, the Pips, and I don't know where some of the jazz group was there that didn't appeal to me anything. But I love music. I love operas. I love classical stuff. All the records I have back there, John Gary, who was a singer, and all the people that folk now don't associate with. Unless you're my age. I don't know if you connect in the names I've mentioned so far, But yeah, that's me. I go to sleep with my Google right on my pillow next to me, and it's that type of thing that soothes me. I can't get into all the brass stuff and the rap stuff, and I ran across Al Green. I was telling Wendy the other night. I said, I ran across the Al Green came up. You know, there's things on Google that come up. You know what's coming up next. But Al Green came up. Last time I listened to Al Green was last night. Really. Um, let's get together. What the name is? Lay your head on my pillow, whatever it is. I don't know what it is. Yeah, it's a good thing. Uh, but yeah, I'm into that type of music. I don't care whether it's instrumental or whether it's vocal. I just and I heard Paul Robeson, the old black singer, years ago. He has a song I call Congolese Lullaby. Black History Month was Black History Week. See, so people that we celebrated back then, when I was in the elementary school, the early high school, black people mentioned then were old people, Sojourner Truth, Jesse Owens, you know, Ralph Bunche, who used to be a black person in the United Nations who kind of brokered the peace between Israel and all this kind of stuff back then. Uh, Joe Louis, uh, Benjamin O. Davis Sr., first black general. Well, these were the black people who were celebrated then. There was no Martin Luther King, say, like that. And people now, we have a month, over February's Black History Month. And, but back then, there were no black stories when I was in elementary school. The only black story I never had black was a little black Sambo. This is true. We didn't have the black stories back then. The ventriloquist that I said was the husband of my first grade teacher, Mr. Logan. He was ventriloquist. A little black doll, you know, things like that. But other than that, there was no black. We got no black history when I was in elementary school. No black history when I was in high school. And the only thing we knew was segregation. And we weren't taught it because there's nothing to teach. As I said before, these people who we celebrate as black inheritors, they've gone a long time. Mary Clyde Bethune. I mean, these George Washington Carver. They're gone, you know, way back. And the same thing, I guess, is why it was just only a week instead of a month. But now we have black icons. Now, you know, you could fill up a year. You could have a Black History year. But back then, oh no. And living up in a segregated era, it stays with you. Christ, I was an adult working, a college graduate, and you see, it has a sign on Raleigh buses. North Carolina law requires colored passengers occupy first vacant rear seat. I mean, that was a sign on street buses here in Raleigh. And when they passed the desegregation thing in the 50s, they took the signs down, but the place where the sign was, you still knew that sign was there, and you knew that. I mean, that's in your brain. You see, and if I could go up to New York to visit my sister or my Aunt Hattie or somebody up there, you just naturally tended to go to the back of things. That's psychological. I'm an adult, a college graduate, and that's still with you. I get on the bus right now. And I haven't been on the city bus in Raleigh, I don't know when. But getting on the bus right now, I can still, in my mind, I can still see that sign. And you knew where you weren't supposed to go. So I remember time going to white water fountains and black water fountains in downtown Raleigh in front of the courthouse. Black, white, water fountains, just sad. I remember going to downtown Raleigh when I was a boy, a little kid, and down in the basement of Hudson Bell. That's where Santa was. And you stand in line. It's a true story. You stand in line to talk to Santa. And if you're a little white kid, Santa sits you on this knee and give you a piece of candy. If you're a black kid, he sits you on that knee and give you a nut. Ho, 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 little boy, have a nut. See? And that's that kind of stuff, yes, that's what you grew up with. That's what you grew up with. And I can, it's growing old, you go back now and you see what impact this stuff has on you. What's happened in my life? All the major events in my life. World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Act, desegregation, voting rights. All that's happening in my lifetime. First black president of the United States, first black senator of the United States. They had some black senators way back in time, but South, you can come from the South, Mississippi. You had black senators and what have you. Now the possibility of a black female president in my lifetime. How can you top that? I haven't missed a thing. how can you top that? And see, Wendy can't understand that. She can't comprehend. She went to all integrated schools. See, Wanda, age 6 to 8, only segregated school she went to when she was very small. And my great grandkids now, all their friends, my Aria is the little female great grandkid. Our friends are white, they going to school now, integrated, what have you. Wendy has a picture right now because Pearl sent her to a Montessori school. And Montessori sent a little program back some years ago of that first Montessori class. On a little black face on his Wednesday. it's so. I mean, you see how things just change. In the old neighborhood, now practically like your sister stays around there, and just it's. I mean, we didn't have paved streets in the area where your sister stayed. We have paved streets in East Raleigh, east of Tarboro Road, all dirt. They were all dirt. The only paved street stopped in front of our house because they went up to the gate to St. Augustine's, and from St. Augustine's on east was dirt. See, on every street in East Raleigh was dirt. And west of Tarboro, going west, where the white neighborhoods stop, that's where the paved streets stop. There were no paved streets in the black neighborhoods. I mean, it's just amazing. I could walk when I was going to Lucy Hunter. The old Confederate soldiers' home was 6 blocks from my house. And you could pass that and you see the old barracks that the old Confederate veterans stayed. Where the motor vehicles building is now, that was where the old Confederate home used to be. And my older siblings who went to Lucy Hunter could remember a few old white veterans who were still living there before they died. And some of them still wore the uniforms. Now I said I remember them too, but I'm almost sure they were workers. Now I'm 5 or 6 years old, and I'm walking past that same building. So I can't doubt that there's some old veterans still standing there. The people that I saw were old because they had young guys in the Confederate Army, little drummers and what have you, and they could have been that. They could have been the ones I saw. And I remember state fairgrounds used to be right across the street from the motor vehicles building on Newman Avenue. Parades, Ringling Brothers and Bonnie Bailey Circus, that used to be the fairgrounds here. The parade would start at the Capitol, come down Newman Avenue. Everybody in Raleigh lined both sides of Newman Avenue, and the lions and the elephants and the clowns and all this. That's the parade. The old Ringling Brothers Circus. That was the route to the fairgrounds. Now I can remember that just like yesterday. And state fair, the state market out on Leachville Road. I can remember we used to be on a lot no larger than my backyard, right off of US 1 North, which was the main route north and south. From the north, I came right through Raleigh. US 1 came right through, right past the governor's mansion. The airport, no Raleigh Durham Airport, it used to be Raleigh Airport, down the end of Federal Street. Old airline then was Eastern Airlines. You could see it. The flight path came right over our neighborhood. You could read the letters on the side of the airplane. Eastern Airline, EO. My life. This is gonna be the closest thing to an autobiography that people ever get. That's a good question. Well, I don't want to die and no one remembers me. And I would think that to be remembered, you must have had some impact on something that'll make a person remember you. I'd like to be remembered as being, because this is true, I was the first black to be hired as a full-time administrator with an office in South Building. It's the University of North Carolina. Now people say, well, what's South Building? South Building was the main administrative building on the campus at UNC Chapel Hill. Now it's mostly remembered for the old well that sits in front of the South Building and the soldier that was pulled down by the students because it sat there. And this was supposed to be an old Confederate soldier defending South Building, Center University. And I'm in South Building for 23 years. I could see that monument. I could see that well every day that I was there. And I was the first black in that position, to hold that position. I was also the first black to hold that position in any of the universities in the system, white or black. My sister-in-law would say that would be called, ha ha, I live longer than you. but I would never. But my sister-in-law would say that. She would say that. But I'm going to meet them, and I'll have this conversation with them when I meet them because I know my mother's there waiting for me. Uh, but maybe all of my siblings except one. Maybe I don't know what's up there, but I, I, I can't. I can't. I don't know. That's a hard. That's a hard question. Uh, but no, I don't think there's nothing I could I could say to them that I haven't said to them already. Once I was very close to all of my siblings, even those who left home early to get out of the house. Well, the house was, I'm saying, I was a young 8. We were all there at one time. See, uh, my and they were all good people. I mean, I never had any problems. And being the baby, I had plenty of protection. See, there was no bullies. There was no bullies to me because I had brothers, who made me bulletproof, man. It was it was a great, it was great, it was great growing up. We were never hungry. St. Aug had a farm. We could go and get stuff off the farm. They had a dairy herd. We got milk from the college. They had this farm out there behind the college that raised most of its own food. Its own dairy herd had most of the milk and all that, and they would open the farm out up to the neighborhood. We go to get the corn and sweet potatoes and just about anything they had over that they didn't use for the college. So all the kids in my neighborhood were fat and greasy. We ate well, and nobody was hungry, so I never had a problem with that. And my mother was an excellent cook. My wife couldn't cook a lot. I couldn't cook a lick, but she learned. She learned well. My mother taught her well, but no, it was a fun neighborhood. It was a fun neighborhood. You go to one neighbor's house and it's like your house. Your neighbors would punish you like your mother would punish you. And nothing was said. You expected that. You looked out for each other. You leave the door open at night. Nobody had air conditioning back then. But there was no Saturday night fights. Ended up at St. Agnes. Every time we heard a siren, we'd run down to the hospital and see who was cut, who was shot, and one thing another. And wherever we were in the neighborhood, we heard a siren. These kids come from everywhere, running down to the hospital, looking to see what was going on. But it was a good neighborhood. Sodas, drink trucks would come by to deliver the drinks and the snacks and things to the stores, and then all the drinks in open trucks. A car that you just wanted soda, you just went back and pull one out of that. But it was a great neighborhood. People were kind, considerate, and some of the biggest homes in Raleigh were within 2 blocks. My old home place, the Delaney sisters. I don't know if you heard about they were very famous. Had a play about them in New York, and the Weavers. They were the only 2 homes that had furnaces, gas furnaces. And one now has been restored. The Weaver house has been torn down now, but it was a good neighborhood. It was a good neighborhood. Yes, for my grandkids, for my grandkid Chandler, Wendy's daughter, she She knows already. She wrote a nice piece when her grandmother, my wife, died. She wrote a very nice piece. She ought to call her Queen Pearl. She wrote a beautiful piece about her. I took Wendy to school when we moved out. When we moved out here, uh, Wendy, not Wendy, but Chandler, Wendy's daughter, was 1 year old. We moved out here in '90, and Wendy was Chandler was about 1 year old. And during her years, I took her to drove to school. One thing when I retired in 1995, three things that I mentioned to folk at my retirement. First thing I was going to do, first thing, so I could take my granddaughter to school. The second thing, so I could pick her up after school. The third thing is, when I wasn't doing that, I could stay in bed at 12 o'clock and then decide what I want to do the rest of the day. Now I'm doing all of those three things now. Wendy Gay would tell you, I don't come downstairs until 1 o'clock. Sometimes later than that, sometimes earlier than that. But I told me I come down when my body tells me to. That's when my body tells me to stay in bed, I stay in bed. My body tells me to get up, I get up. I said, but actually, I'm doing those three things right now that I said what I would do almost 30 years ago when I retired. And I'm doing those things. I don't drive anymore. Almost forgotten how. I used to walk around a lot, walk up the street up there. It's not hills, just flat. Walk around there. And when I retired, when I was staying before we moved out here, I would walk 4 or 5 miles a day. It's probably why my knees are going bad on me. But I'm doing exactly what I said I would do when I retired. The only thing that I hadn't planned on was my kidneys going bad. But as I said before, I can't complain. I might have about a couple of years left on these kidneys. And I can't ask for more than that. I can't ask for more than that. I don't have any regrets. I don't have any debts. I don't have any stress. To actually tell you the truth, I don't worry about anything. I guess it's one of the reasons why I sleep. I have no trouble sleeping. But no, my grandkids, my great grandkids, if I had to say anything to them, it'd just be to honor your parents. I think they're doing that. I'm just amazed at how my youngest great grandkid, Aria, the little girl, she has a beautiful vocabulary. And I just tell her, I said, no, sweetheart, I said, whatever happens, if somebody asks you how you're doing, you tell them it's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day. Every day is a beautiful day. And sometimes I think, I said, now, if I weren't alive, would today be like today is? Would the weather be the same? Did I have any impact on the weather in all my years? Did I have any impact? Of course, no, you don't. The sun's going to come at the same time. It's going to go down at the same time. The same moon that Jesus Christ looked at, the same moon I look at. The same sun that warmed him warmed me. That's the way I look at it. That's my connection with them. My mother, I'll never forget her. She's here. And when you're on here, that's when you forget. As long as you can have it here. And I guess that's why my memory is good, because all the people I knew they're right. The faces. I mean, really, the faces. If I saw one walking the door right now, even though Christ, it's been 90 years plus since I've seen some of the old elementary school teachers. The faces, just as clear to me today as they were back then. My real friends, kids that I really knew, all the friends that I grew up with, they're right here. I had a friend that died at age 13 in a creek. When I leave here, I cross it every day. And I said, okay, Donald died in that creek. And I can see him. I remember his face. If I saw him as an adult, it'd be different. But if I saw him, I know, sorry, Donald. That's Donald. And that's in a way that's good. In a way that's good. This came right here. I don't know if that's gonna show up in this, but I hope it doesn't. And I tell Wendy, I said, okay, sure, take the cane. But back for the high school thing in August. I said, keep this. I don't want to get people to see me with a cane. But one guy did have to help me up the steps go for the stage. And but yeah, those are things. I don't know. If my kids, my grandkids and great grandkids can grow up with any of the values that my mother instilled in me, and I try to do the same with Wendy and Wanda, to be good people. To be good people.